2, 1.
Okay, hello, my name is Karl Johan. This is the talk Entrepreneurship on the Moon, where I'm going to explain a little bit about myself and our project at Saga. And I only have around 12 minutes, which is not enough at all, but we'll see how much we can get around, and hopefully you'll have an understanding of what I'm doing and maybe learn something about how you can do something in space too. So entrepreneurship on the moon, it sounds like a completely ridiculous idea. No one is on the moon. No one has been there for 50 years, but some things are about to change. And that's why I believe that it's really relevant to start to think about space right now. So in this little talk, I'm going to explain to you about Saga, which is the design studio that I was part in founding. And I'm going to tell you about our biggest project called Alumni, which is to build a moon habitat, a home on the moon, and test it in Greenland. And I'll let you in on a little bit about the process of how we're doing that, and also explaining what the end goal of the mission is. Hint, it's about going to the moon. And then I'll show you where I'm sitting as well. So Saga Space Architects is only 2 years old, and I founded it with my partner Sebastian, who is also an architect, and with Simon, who's a programmer. And our dream is, put simply, to design habitats or homes for future astronauts going out into space, to Mars and to the moon. Now, why should I be doing that and not an engineer? Because I'm an architect. So in order to understand why I chose this, you have to understand what it's like to go to the moon, or let's actually say what it's like to go to Mars. To go to Mars, firstly, you have to wait for the planets to align. They're in orbit around the sun, in different orbits, and only once every 2 years, they're so close together that you can make the leap from Earth to Mars. But that leap in itself takes 9 months. So you have to sit inside a little capsule for 9 months. And then you have to stay for the 2 years until the planets align again, and then you can make the leap back again. So all in all, you're going to be spending almost 4 years on the whole journey, which is a lot longer than anyone has ever been into space. All of you have now had some first-hand experience with how it is to be in isolation. It's Corona times, and it's really relevant because you might have learned that being at home, even if you have Netflix or entertainment and being very comfortable, is not very fun at all. And some of the effects of being isolated for a long time and in space is that you start to lose a sense of time. You're very likely to become depressed. You feel lonely. You feel deprived of energy. You feel apathetic. And all those problems are things that engineers are not used to dealing with. And it's something that we as architects are somewhat trained to target. So in architecture education, you learn how people live and how they interact with the space around them and what things influence you to have a pleasant day. So that's why we started Saga, because we see now humans are going into space again. There was a launch 2 days ago of the first astronauts from American soil in 10 years. And it's also the first astronauts flying on a commercial spacecraft to the ISS with SpaceX. We're going to see this a lot more. And in the future, in say 10, 20 years, we'll have long-term, long-distance journeys to the moon and Mars. And that's why it might seem like a crazy idea right now to make a business plan based on habitation on the moon or Mars. But in 10 to 20 years, this will be really relevant, and it's a good opportunity right now to get a little bit ahead on that opportunity and start preparing already. So that's the whole idea of what we're doing. until this point is to prepare ourselves to build better habitats, more livable habitats for future astronauts going to space. Now, I'm 23 years old, turning 24 tomorrow, and my co-founder is 26. We don't have any special education in aerospace engineering, and we're really sort of starting from a point of nothing. So we have an idea, which is to build these homes, and we've designed them, and we're throwing concepts around, but how do you actually start doing this? How do you start doing a project that's so big that you want to go to the moon, a moonshot project? It's very simple, and it's something that some of you might have experienced in other projects. It's a very simple truth. To do something really big, like going to the moon, you can't do all of it at once. It might seem completely daunting, but every huge project, even the space projects, are just done one small bite at a time. So there's this Danish saying, I think, that says if you want to eat an elephant, all you have to do is take one bite, and then the next and the next, and eventually you'll have eaten the elephant. And that's a key lesson, because I believe that anything is possible with this approach, and a huge complex project is really just a lot of small tasks that are not so complicated in themselves. But once you solve them all, you will eventually have solved everything. So our dream is to go to the moon. And we had no education in space, so me and Sebastian were thinking to ourselves, what are the first steps we can do? And once, hopefully once we'll get to the moon, and people will look at what we've done there and think, how is that even possible? And that journey that explains that possibility is what I'm on right now. So I'll explain what we're doing in order to get there. And I think probably this one step at a time method is something that will make you confident that you can do any project that you want. Okay, so the first step for us is, okay, we can't go to the moon. We haven't done anything. What is a feasible first step that will get us there? And to us, it occurred that there are places on Earth that are as extreme and as isolated as the moon itself. And going to that place and making a habitat for that will sort of prove that what we're doing is actually capable of working in those very special conditions. So the conditions are very isolated, far away from any civilization, approximately 4 to 5 days for anyone to get to where you are. A completely monotonous landscape, freezing cold, and then a sun that never sets. Where do you find that? So we found that in Greenland. So if you go all the way up to the north of Greenland, you might as well be on the moon. And we thought to ourselves, well, there's a feasible first step. People have been going there before, we can do it again. And if we make a habitat, a home on space that will work in that condition, that will get us into the business of making real moon habitats in the future. So where do you start on making a habitat? Well, to go to any extreme place, you quickly learn that it's a transport that's the most difficult. So every kilogram sent to space costs somewhat like, I don't know, $50,000 for every kilogram. And the rockets themselves are quite small, so you can't just ship this perfect home there. So a key problem that we found out very early that we have to solve is transportability, making something compact, which then unfolds and becomes big as it lands on the moon. Now, there are many ways of doing that, and we just started looking around everywhere. You can make a balloon that unfolds, you can make something that you put together like a kit of parts, but we started looking at leaves and flowers and how they go from a little bud to branching out into a huge leaf or a flower. And the way that a leaf folds is actually quite similar to the origami designs that we see from Japan. Ancient origami designs are quite similar to a leaf. So we started, one step at a time. We wanted to make this crazy habitat. We had imagined in our head something that deploys, it's fully closed, shielding from the weather, shielding from radiation. And what we pictured was something like this. So this is the actual design that we've come up with. And it has this origami shell and these structural legs. And I have another model of the shell here, which then folds down to a much smaller space, while still remaining rigid and strong enough for us to live in it. And we often get asked, how did you make this one? This is so crazy. Again, one bite at a time. So the first bite is, what is origami at all? We looked it up. We found out some different patterns, and we chose this pattern here. So just a flat sheet of paper, folding with a simple pattern, and it folds down like so. The key here is that it folds in all directions, which means that we thought it might be possible to make any shape that just folds into a smaller version of its own shape. So once you have the flat sheet, then what's the next step to get to here? Probably to make it curved. So actually the first step was that now it's flat, paper thin. The structure always has thickness, so we thought, how do we make the thickness? We played around. It's one problem. It can be broken down logically, and eventually we came to this. So this is a 3D print of the structure. It has thickness. As you can see, every panel is thick, meaning you can put insulation in it. Okay, first problem solved. Next problem, curvature. One direction of curvature is a cylinder. How do you make a cylinder? So that's the next problem. Now we've already solved two. So we sat down, consulted with some mathematicians, and eventually we came up with this cylinder that folds quite neatly. Okay, so now we have 3 steps in. Now, fourth step, how to make it rounded. And it didn't take us long. Once we knew the origami and how it works and how to work with it mathematically, we could quickly make it rounded. And then the last thing to solve was just how to close it so that it doesn't have an opening like this, but that it's closed like this. We managed to do that. It took some time, I must admit, but it was still a very defined problem that was easy to solve. I mean, it wasn't easy, but it was easily defined, and it didn't seem like a vague problem at all. So here we have it. This is the final design. 4 steps, and we achieved this. Now, we made a bigger model as well. I'm not going to fold this one down because it's a little unstable, too big. But this is how the actual habitat will look, the shell of it. So I can see I'm already running out of time. But I just wanted to explain to you that I know that we're not going to the moon yet. We're going to Greenland, and we'll go there in 3 months, from September, October to November. We'll live inside this little shell, testing our moon habitat, which we're designing and building ourselves here in Denmark. And I'm actually sitting inside the habitat right now. It's not the final habitat, but it's a big model of how it's going to be. So as you can see, I'm sitting here on the floor, my desk. Up here, we have this line panel, which simulates changing weather. Right now, it's cloudy, and if you pay attention, you can see that the clouds are moving very slowly, as if on a window. These are some of the ideas that we're implementing to try to make this more livable. I'll be sleeping up here. Sebastian, who's going with me for 3 months, is going to be sleeping up there. It's quite small, but it's doable. This is where you exit through an airlock. And here you see the habitat in its full scale. So we believe this is a design that has potential to work on the moon, and we're going to test it for 3 months in Greenland. And again, the lesson from this talk is that space is becoming a thing. it's becoming a new thing where people live for longer. It's commercial, and it opens a lot of opportunities for non-space professionals, traditional non-space professions, to join this new era of space exploration. And if you want to get to the moon, you just got to go one step at a time. Thank you.
Thank you for this.